Chapter 2753. Bam! An earth-shattering sound erupted, shaking the void for millions of miles. The first dark golden dragon claw slammed into the God King clone. Under the incomparably violent power, the God King's clone was sent flying back, tumbling 100,000 miles away. But at this moment, the second dark golden dragon claw slammed in front of him. Strangely, this dragon claw suddenly changed direction and slashed at the God King clone's left arm like a giant blade. Crack! With a crisp sound, the God King clone's left arm broke on the spot, turning into golden light and dissipating. The unconscious Ji Wuhan, who was being carried by the God King clone's left arm, instantly fell into the void. With a flip of his dark golden dragon claw, he grabbed Ji Wuhan in his palm. Then, with a flash of golden light, the dragon claw retracted into the passage and disappeared. Even the passageway between the two worlds was rapidly closing. In the blink of an eye, the five-colored light and lightning disappeared, the passage disappeared, and the void regained its calm. Ah! You damned bastard, you're despicable to the extreme. The God King clone, whose left arm had been cut off, flew for 90,000 miles before stopping. He couldn't feel any pain, but he was infuriated by endless anger and humiliation. What infuriated him the most was that the dragon claw immediately retracted after snatching Ji Wuhan, not giving him a chance to fight back at all. Bastard! Despicable bastard! This emperor will definitely go find you. I'll skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and scatter your soul. The God King clone stood in the void and roared furiously, venting his endless anger. He originally wanted to spare Ji Wuhan's life and personally direct a good show. But he didn't expect that someone else would intercept him just as he was about to return to the God realm. This was a great humiliation. However, the God King clone quickly calmed down and calmed his anger. The passage above his head started to shrink again. Clearly, Yun Shuyan's blood ignition divinity transformation power was too weak and could only hold on for a moment. The God King clone didn't waste any more time. Holding the sky pivot wrapped in golden light, he jumped into the passage. Swoosh! The wretched and weak God King clone disappeared. Not long after, the passageway between the two worlds closed. The void returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Only the messy Heaven Fa star floated quietly in the void. Tens of millions of miles away from it was a huge invisible gravitational field and a black hole with a circumference of 100 million miles. On the other side, in the void a billion miles away from the Heaven Punisher star, the Five Elements world was also floating quietly without any ripples. The Five Elements world was still peaceful. The tens of billions of martial artists and common people on the 5 continents had no idea what was going on. Chapter 2755. In the huge distorted spacetime, there was dead silence. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and searched every corner, but he did not see a single person. Yun Yao was not here, Ji Ku was not here, the white dragon was not here, and the 2 children were not here either. In fact, even the 4 divine beasts were nowhere to be seen. Ji Tianqing's heart surged with deep uneasiness and worry. He had a premonition that the worst outcome that he had guessed had probably already happened. Thus, he hurriedly left the divine tower and took out the source stone jade slip. He sent a message to everyone, including the 4 divine beasts. After a long wait of an hour, he still did not receive a reply. All the messages that he sent out were like stones sinking into the sea. Ji Tianqing's heart sank to the bottom of the valley, his expression and eyes were solemn to the extreme. Swoosh! He hurriedly used the power of the world and left the 5 Elements world. A moment later, he appeared in the dark and cold void. Fortunately, the 5 Elements world was still in place and did not move at all. But what surprised Ji Tianqing was that the sacred golden light that enveloped the 5 Elements world actually disappeared. The divine light barrier of the 5 Elements world is related to the ancient goddess Yaoguang. How could it suddenly disappear? Ji Tianqing was full of doubts. He sensitively sensed that something big must have happened. Thus, he circled around the dim Five Elements world and flew at top speed in the void. 8 days later. He stopped in the void, his eyes fixed on the Five Elements world, and landed at the center point. That's right, the golden light barrier that enveloped the Five Elements world had indeed disappeared. In other words, the Five Elements world had lost its seal, and at the same time, it had also lost its special protection. However, the golden light barrier did not completely disappear. Somewhere in the Five Elements world, there was an extremely small light spot. Ji Tianqing was full of doubts and flew towards that light spot. A day later, he arrived in front of the light spot. Only then did he see clearly that it was a ball of sacred golden light with a radius of 90 feet. In the pure and flawless golden ball of light, a figure was sleeping soundly. It was a figure with a graceful figure and a beautiful face that could topple nations. The familiar waist-length hair, the moon-white dress, and the face that was like a masterpiece made Ji Tianqing's body tremble. Yao Yao. Ji Tianqing instantly recognized that the sleeping figure in the light ball was Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao's eyes were closed and she was still unconscious. Could it be that Yao Yao was also killed by the deity king's clone? She was reborn just like me, resurrected in the divine light fortress. At this moment, she's like me in the past. She's spending a long period of time in the dreamscape and looking down at the myriad of worlds. In just a few breaths of time, Ji Tianqing guessed the reason. As it turned out, his guess was correct. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others must have gone to planet raiding and met the deity king's avatar. Ji Tianqing suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. He was extremely anxious. If Yao Yao is resurrected here, then what about Ku? What about our children? What about the white dragon and the 4 divine beasts? He murmured with a cold face. He hurriedly controlled the power of the world to search in the Five Elements world. He had to find the others. Especially Ku and the 2 children. Whether he went to heaven or hell, he had to find them. However, things did not go as he wished. After an entire day, Ji Tianqing searched all over the Five Elements world and searched all the places where the others might appear. However, he still could not find a single one. Planet raiding. There's still planet raiding. In his despair, a thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind as he thought of the Star of Heaven punishment. That was his last hope. He flew through the void without hesitation and went straight to planet raiding. In order to reach there as quickly as possible, he did not hesitate to consume the remaining power of the world in his body and raised his speed to the limit. 10 days later, Ji Tianqing appeared on planet raiding. After the successive disasters, planet raiding was already in a terrible state. 3 of the 5 continents were destroyed, and the last 2 continents were also in chaos. Of the initial 30 billion people, only about 10 billion were left. More than 80% of the martial gods had died in the war. Only a small number of soldiers and experts had escaped from planet raiding and rushed to planet celestial chaos. Now, planet raiding was truly without a leader. The 10 billion people on the 2 continents had been in chaos and fear. Killings occurred everywhere, the people's hearts were in turmoil, and the war was in full swing. The news of the destruction of the Arch Palace and the death of the Thearch's son and the Empress had already spread throughout planet raiding. The surviving people all knew that planet raiding was finished. The more powerful leaders and experts all wanted to escape from planet raiding as soon as possible. However, without enough forces, resources, and battleships, they could not leave at all. As a result, hundreds of great forces broke out into a great battle royale and slaughtered one another. In order to escape from planet raiding and go to their new home, and in order to survive, they did not care about the friendship of their own race and raised their weapons against their own race. Human nature was evil. For survival, benefits, and status, they would be keen on internal strife. No matter in time and space, in any world, for any race, this was the universal truth. After Ji Tianqing arrived at planet rating, he used the power of the world to check the situation of the two continents. In just a few hours, he saw the situation of planet rating. At the same time, he also received the most important news. The Arch Palace has been destroyed. Tian Shu and Yun Shuiyan are both dead. Ji Tianqing immediately realized that this matter must have something to do with Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. Therefore, he controlled the power of the world and went to the old site of the Arch Palace. There used to be an endless sea of clouds thousands of miles high in the sky. Now, there were thousands of holes and gaps in the sea of clouds hundreds of thousands of miles wide. Even though 2 months had passed since the war, those holes and gaps had not disappeared. Even the sea within a radius of 300,000 miles under the sky had become a dried-up land that looked like ruins. Countless powerful divine powers were still left in the ruins. The mixed divine power was like a transparent wall that filled the ruins and blocked off the endless seawater around them. In about a year or two, those mixed divine powers would dissipate. At that time, the sea water in all directions would no longer be obstructed and would drown the ruins. When the sea returned to normal, the traces of the war would also be covered. Ji Tianqing stood in the sea of clouds with his eyes closed. He was releasing his divine sense to cover the surrounding 100,000 miles and carefully investigate. At the same time, he also used the power of the world to protect the ruins. This was because as soon as he arrived, he detected the most familiar auras. First of all, the divine power of the Divine King's clone was the most violent and overbearing. Secondly, there were the auras of Yun Yao and Ji Ku, as well as the auras of Bai Long, Ji Wushuang, and the 3 divine beasts. The facts proved that they had indeed been to the Arch Palace and had fought here for a long time. The aura of the Divine King's clone was the strongest, which proved that he had fought here and released a powerful divine power. By the time Ji Tianqing found these clues, the answer was already obvious. He immediately guessed that they had most likely died here. No matter how strong he was, how powerful he was, how high his power and status was. His wife, children, friends, and himself had all been killed by the God King's avatar. If he didn't take revenge for such a blood feud, he wouldn't be a man. After a long time, Ji Tianqing gradually suppressed his anger and killing intent. He stared at the light screen with bloodshot eyes and suddenly thought of a problem. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and Bai Long had all been killed by the Divine King's avatar. But what about his son, Ji Wuhan, and Lan Kuan? Why didn't the Divine King's avatar kill them? Soon, Ji Tianqing saw the result. Lan Kuan couldn't bear the humiliation and self-detonated before the Divine King's avatar could capture it. It was this self-detonation that weakened the Divine King's avatar greatly. Ji Wuhan also fainted. In the end, only the Divine King's avatar, Ji Wuhan, Yun Shuiyan, and Tian Shu were left in the sky. Tian Shu had long been turned into a pile of meat paste and was being protected by the heavily injured Yun Shuiyan. Then, the Divine King's avatar exchanged a few words with her and left with her, Tian Shu, and Ji Wuhan. At this point, Ji Tianqing understood what had happened. He didn't need to guess to know what had happened. The Divine King's avatar must have taken Yun Shuiyan, Tian Shu, and Ji Wuhan to the depths of the void. Ji Tianqing's expression was gloomy. He frowned and analyzed. The Divine King's avatar didn't kill Wuhan and instead took him away. It's most likely because Wuhan is like me. That damned bastard. He wants to bring Wuhan back to the divine realm and nurture him into a sharp blade. He must have guessed that I'm not truly dead and will go to the divine realm to seek revenge sooner or later. Therefore, he used Wuhan as a trump card to deal with me at the critical moment. What a vicious mind. Ji Tianqing analyzed and guessed the Divine King's avatar's scheme. However, this also made him feel slightly relieved. At least, after Wuhan was brought back to the divine realm, his life wouldn't be in danger before he sought revenge on the Divine King. However, it was inevitable that Wuhan would suffer a lot of cruel torment. Ji Tianqing took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He continued to analyze. The Divine King's avatar is already very weak. It's already very difficult for him to bring Wuhan back to the divine realm. He probably won't take Yun Shuiyan and Tian Shu with him. First, it's impossible. Second, Tian Shu's talent is far inferior to my son Wuhan's. When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing was somewhat puzzled. No, if the Divine King's avatar didn't take Yun Shuiyan and her son away, they must have returned to the heaven-punishing planet to recuperate. Why is the heaven-punishing planet without a leader? Rumor has it that Yun Shuiyan and her son are dead. No. There must be a problem here. Chapter 2757. Ji Tianqing was a little depressed, and his heart was filled with regret. However, Lan Kuan and the glazed fire dragon could not be saved. He was only a peak true god now, not a powerful divine king. Even if he wanted to revive Lan Kuan and the glazed fire dragon, there was nothing he could do. I hope I can still meet you in my next life. At that time, I will definitely take good care of you and not let you suffer such a tragedy again. Ji Tianqing looked at the ruins with a sorrowful gaze and murmured in his heart. Then, he put away his heavy and sorrowful heart and began the revival plan. The remains of his daughter Wushuang, his disciple White Dragon, Xianyu, and Black Dragon were all mixed together and piled up into a small mountain that was 10 feet tall. After all, Xianyu and Black Dragon had revealed their original bodies before they were killed. After they were killed, the remains that could be preserved until now were only 1/1000th of their original bodies. Ji Tianqing carefully examined the pile of remains and first picked out his daughter Wushuang's remains and divine soul fragments. Within 15 minutes, he finished his selection. His once innocent and extremely cute daughter had now become a pile of bones and flesh that were as fine as sand and 9 divine soul fragments. Ji Tianqing felt extremely guilty, and his heart ached as if it was being cut by a knife. That was his most beloved and most obedient daughter. However, the matter at hand was more important. He restrained his emotions and released the life-saving divine light in the heaven-mending pearl. Swoosh! A sacred white light surged out of his palm and enveloped the pile of bones and divine soul fragments. In order to successfully revive Ji Wushuang, Ji Tianqing used 100 sets of life-saving divine light. That was the power to revive 100 martial gods. Ji Wushuang was a peak true god. After she was killed, only this little bit of remains would be left. It would definitely consume 10 times, 100 times more life-saving divine light. The facts proved that Ji Tianqing's estimation was correct. The 100 sets of life-saving divine light enveloped Ji Wushuang's remains and surged for 4 hours. It was not until 4 hours later that the divine light stopped surging. Within the white light, a petite and cute figure appeared. Her appearance was as beautiful as Yun Yao, and her temperament was innocent and cute to the extreme. She looked like she was only 8 or 9 years old. Her eyes were tightly closed, and she was in a deep sleep. Ji Wushuang was successfully resurrected. His height, appearance, bloodline, and aptitude were exactly the same as before. Ji Tianqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and his heavy heart eased a lot. He knew that although Wushuang had been resurrected, he was still weak and his divine soul was still in a heavily injured state. She would have to sleep for at least 10 years before she could wake up. As for her injuries, it would take 30 to 40 years for her to recover. It would take 100 years for his strength to recover. But none of this was important. As long as his daughter was alive, it would be a blessing. Ji Tianqing placed the unconscious Wushuang into the sword world of the burial of heaven and let her sleep in a place where she could heal her injuries. Then, he selected the white dragon's bones and soul fragments from the mountainous sea of consciousness. A quarter of an hour later, the white dragon's bones and divine soul fragments were picked out. The remains of his bones and flesh could fill up a basin, but there were only 8 pieces of his soul. Ji Tianqing released another 100 rays of life-saving divine light, enveloping the white dragon's skeleton. 6 hours later, the white dragon was also successfully revived. Of course, he was also in a comatose state. His divine soul was heavily injured, and his strength was incomparably weak. Ji Tianqing also placed the white dragon into the sword world. Next was to revive Qian Yu and the black dragon. The remaining remains of the two were obviously larger in size and had more distinct characteristics. Of course, Qian Yu had more bones left, and the black dragon had fewer. Ji Tianqing used 120 rays of life-saving divine light to revive Qian Yu. When he revived the black dragon, not only did he use 150 rays of life-saving divine light, he also spent an additional 4 hours. Just like that, a day passed. Those that could be revived were all revived. Ji Tianqing finished casting the spell and placed Qian Yu and the black dragon into the sword world, letting them rest in a deep sleep. Although he was somewhat haggard and exhausted, he did not dare to delay. However, he didn't dare to waste any time. He quickly left the heaven-punishing planet and entered the void. Outside planet Heaven Trader, Ji Tianqing stood in the void somewhere. He looked up at the void and nodded slightly. According to his memory, the passage between the two worlds opened and the Divine King's clone descended to the mortal world was right above his head. Perhaps it was at a height of 30,000 miles, or perhaps it was at a height of 28,000 miles. In short, the error was not big. It should be in that area. After confirming the location, Ji Tianqing used the time reversal divine power again. Swoosh! Soon, a huge light screen with a radius of 1,000 feet appeared in the void in front of him. As he cast the spell, images quickly appeared on the light screen. Although those images were of the dark void, they were somewhat messy and fragmented, and they were changing rapidly. Ji Tianqing was casting the spell to reverse the time 2 months ago. After a full 15 minutes, some dazzling light appeared in the fragmented images. Chapter 2759. Ji Tianqing's judgment was very accurate. He had cultivated in the distorted spacetime for more than 4 years, so it had only been about 50 months. His divine Tao foundation was very stable, and his skills had also improved. At this moment, Ji Ku returned. 50 months had passed in the divine pagoda, but only 1 month had passed in the outside world. Including the 2 months she had been unconscious, she had been asleep for a total of 3 months. Not only had she returned unscathed, but she had also been reborn, becoming even more mysterious and unfathomable. She had a head of fiery red hair that reached her waist, a body of dark golden divine armor, and a dark golden trident. She was like a goddess of war that had descended from the 9 heavens. That beautiful face and unparalleled divine aura was like a divine phoenix. Without a doubt, she, who had been reborn, had truly inherited the phoenix's legacy. In her previous life, she had only reached the strength of a top divine lord, and had not advanced any further. She could not break through to the divine king realm even if she spent her entire life. After all, this had nothing to do with one's cultivation effort, but talent. If one's talent and perception were not enough, even if they cultivated for 100,000 or 1,000,000 years, they would not reach the divine king realm. But it was different now. She, who had been reborn, had the true blood of the phoenix flowing in her body, and had mastered the divine bird's legacy. She already had the absolute qualifications to reach the divine king realm. When Ji Tianqing saw her, his eyes could not help but light up. The worry that had been hidden in his heart for a long time also dissipated. That's great. Ku, you've really been resurrected. Ji Ku was also stunned. She stared at Ji Tianqing, and her eyes immediately turned red and filled with tears. Big brother Tianqing. You're really fine. I already knew that you were invincible, how could anything happen to you? Ji Ku suppressed her grief and suppressed the tears in her eyes. Like a tired bird returning to its nest, she threw herself into Ji Tianqing's embrace. The two hugged each other tightly, and their emotions were quite emotional. After a while, Ji Ke calmed down and hurriedly asked, "Oh right, where's eldest senior sister? And Wu Hen, Wu Shuang, Bai Long, are they still alive?" Ji Tianqing gently patted her back and said in a low voice, "They were all killed by the divine king's clone, but Yao Yao is in the process of reviving. Moreover, it was a blessing in disguise for her. After fusing with the sixth divine orb, her power would soar to the limit." Wu Shuang, Bai Long, Qian Yu, and He Long were all revived by me using the heaven-mending orb. They are currently sleeping and recuperating. However, Lan Kun self-destructed and Azurite died the earliest. I couldn't revive them. Now, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke could only rely on themselves to travel through the void. It was really inconvenient. Fortunately, the Earth Spirit race in the Sword World had started to build a new battleship under the leadership of the Golden Mountain King. With his previous experience, the Golden Mountain King would definitely build an even more powerful divine battleship. 3 days later, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke arrived at planet Chaotic Heaven. This planet, which used to be the main planet, was now in chaos and looked rather desolate. The 200,000 heaven-punishing soldiers and 1 million heaven-punishing craftsmen were determined to build this planet into a new home. More than 10 billion foreign race martial artists and civilians had fallen into the hands of the heaven-punishing race and become their slaves. However, when planet Chaotic Heaven encountered a calamity, more than 100,000 heaven-punishing soldiers fled here. They brought news that planet Chaotic Heaven was facing a calamity and was about to be destroyed. This caused planet Chaotic Heaven, which was originally stable, to fall into chaos. The foreign race experts who were enslaved by the heaven-punishing race all fought back violently, and the situation became more and more intense. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke entered planet Chaotic Heaven and did not waste any time. They immediately started a massacre. Wherever the heaven-punishing race had the most people, they destroyed that place. It did not matter if you were a heaven-punishing soldier, a heaven-punishing craftsman, or a heaven-punishing puppet. As long as you worked for the heaven-punishing race, you would definitely die. The massacre lasted for half a month. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke were invincible. They killed until the sky darkened. Heads rolled and blood flowed. Half a month later, the two of them killed more than 800,000 heaven-punishing race members before leaving planet Chaotic Heaven. The rest were all defeated soldiers scattered all over the world. They were all small factions. The two of them did not have the time to kill them one by one. The foreign race experts would naturally do it for them. It was only a matter of time. Chapter 2761. After leaving the celestial globe, Ji Tianqing did not go to other worlds to slaughter the remnants of the heaven punishers. Although there were tens of millions of heaven punishers scattered in the thousands of worlds of the various star fields. But if the heaven punishers were destroyed, those heaven punishers would be like rootless duckweeds. In less than a few decades, they would be killed by the powerhouses of the various worlds. Ji Tianqing controlled the 5 elements world and headed directly to the nearest galaxy. He only had one goal. Choose the most suitable star and continue to refine, and refine again. 3 months later, the 5 elements world arrived near a galaxy. This galaxy was the only and most dazzling star core in the celestial globe. The star core that was hundreds of billions of miles long hung in the void, blooming with a brilliant light that would never be extinguished. Among them, there were tens of thousands of stars of various sizes. Basically, they were all barren stars without life. Of course, barren did not mean barren and useless. There were a few planets that seemed to be barren, but they actually contained enormous mineral resources. For example, divine stone veins, metal veins. There were also heaven and earth divine flames, as well as all kinds of wind, fire, and thunder power. Thus, Ji Tianqing chose among the stars. 2 months later, he successfully refined a metal star with a diameter of 30 million miles. 4 months later, he refined a second star with rich resources, which had a diameter of more than 40 million miles. Half a year later, he refined a third star. As time passed, Ji Tianqing continued to refine one star after another. The five elements world was still expanding. Its diameter slowly increased from 900 million miles to a diameter of 1 billion miles. Moreover, the five elements world had obtained a huge amount of resources, and its strength was rapidly increasing. As a result, Ji Tianqing's strength also rose along with it. Starting from the peak true immortal realm, it was doubled, tripled, quadrupled. 2 years later. In the five elements world, in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower. Yun Yao was the first to wake up. The golden divine light that enveloped her had been completely absorbed by her. The truth was just as Ji Tianqing had expected. The divine light barrier that protected the five elements world was formed by the sixth divine pearl. When Yun Yao learned of this in her deep sleep, she was also very shocked and in disbelief. This time, after experiencing death and rebirth, she had also undergone a complete transformation. Even though his appearance hadn't changed, his aura had become even more sacred, as if he was a peerless divine king from the 9 heavens. Her strength had also reached the pinnacle of the mortal world. 99 times that of a peak true god. Furthermore, after fusing with the 6th divine orb, she obtained a brand new power. Light divine power. That's right, the 6th divine pearl represented light. As a result, Yun Yao grasped 6 special divine powers and condensed 6 types of laws. The laws of blue sea, the laws of stars, the laws of longevity, the laws of earth, the laws of wind and fire, and the laws of light. Once she ascended to the divine world, she would be able to break through to the 5th level of the heavenly god realm. Moreover, she could even condense a powerful divine core with the 6 types of laws as the foundation. In addition, Yun Yao had already obtained 6 of goddess Yaoguang's 7 spirits. In the dream, not only had she experienced millions of years, she had seen life, death, and reincarnation, she had also obtained most of goddess Yaoguang's memories. This was the main reason for the change in her temperament. Without a doubt, the current her was very similar to goddess Yaoguang from the ancient era. The two's appearance and temperament were 80% similar. Whether in the mortal world or the divine world, she was a top-notch goddess who could make billions of gods infatuated. When Yun Yao woke up, her first reaction wasn't joy or excitement. Instead, she was in extreme pain and tears flowed down her face. The first people she thought of were Ji Tianqing, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang. Then, it was Ji Ku, Bai Long, and the 4 divine beasts. In her memories, everyone had met with misfortune and been killed by the divine king's clone. Even if she survived and benefited from the disaster, it was still extremely painful and disheartening. Fortunately, Ji Ku had been by her side the whole time. The moment she woke up, Ji Ku held her hand and gently comforted her. After Yun Yao calmed down, Ji Ku explained what had happened to her. Hearing that everyone had been resurrected, Yun Yao felt slightly better. However, the glazed fire dragon and Lan Kun were dead, and Ji Wuhan was also taken away by the Almighty of the Dragon Realm. She was still filled with grief and worry. Ji Ku comforted her again. Brother Tianqing has already done his best, but Glazed and Lan Kun really can't be saved. This is fate. Perhaps one day in the future, we will surpass reincarnation and surpass the heavenly Tao, and we might be able to bring Glazed and Lan Kun back. As for Wuhan, he was saved by the Almighty of the Dragon Realm. It's better than falling into the hands of that divine king. After Ji Ku's persuasion, Yun Yao felt much better and her emotions slowly calmed down. Then, she asked Ji Ku to take her to visit Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, and the others. For a full 15 years, the 5 elements world had been swimming freely in the galaxy. Planets full of resources were swallowed by the 5 elements world one after another. It wasn't until the 16th year that the Five Elements world finally stopped expanding. Although the diameter of this planet still didn't exceed 1 billion kilometers, it had reached 990 million kilometers. And Ji Tianqing's strength had also reached 99 times that of a peak true god. He had already reached the limit of the mortal world. The two numbers were inexplicably similar. Perhaps it was a coincidence. Then, the Five Elements world stopped in the galaxy. Ji Tianqing returned to his peak strength and returned to the Nine Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. At this time, more than 700 years had passed in the distorted spacetime. Ji Ku and Yunyao waited patiently. They had been consolidating their divine Tao foundation and cultivating various divine abilities and consummate skills. In more than 700 years, the two of them had cultivated dozens of divine abilities. Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, Xian Yu, and Black Dragon had already recovered more than 600 years ago. They had been cultivating in seclusion for over 600 years, and only ended their seclusion when Ji Tianqing returned. After such a long period of seclusion, they naturally gained a lot. The two of them and the two divine beasts had all reached half-step celestial god realm and mastered dozens of divine abilities and secret skills. Everything was ready to go. After Ji Tianqing reunited with everyone, he prepared the ascension plan. However, there were still a few problems to solve before ascension. If everyone ascended, what about the Five Elements world? Continue to stay in the mortal world? Of course, Ji Tianqing wasn't willing. He had already merged with the Five Elements world. With the Five Elements world, he was immortal. He also had endless source stones and could use the power of the world. He really wanted to take the Five Elements world away. However, it was obviously unrealistic to take a planet with him. Since ancient times, such a ridiculous thing had never happened in tens of thousands of years of history. The second problem. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and White Dragon naturally had to ascend to the divine world. However, Black Dragon would definitely ascend to the dragon realm. Xian Yu might also enter the dragon realm. In this case, everyone would be separated once they ascended. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to reunite for the next few hundred years or even thousands of years. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and the rest also frowned and thought of other methods. Everyone was silent, their hearts somewhat heavy. If they could not bring the Five Elements world away, their ascension plan would be obstructed. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind as he thought of a certain possibility. Got it. Everyone stopped thinking and turned to look at him. Tianqing, have you thought of another way? Yunyao asked. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, if I directly shrink the Five Elements world like this, I will definitely destroy this world. If I have a divine artifact with a space of 1 billion miles, I can store the entire Five Elements world. Moreover, this divine artifact will change its size according to my wishes. In fact, it can always be hidden in my body. In this way, won't I be able to bring the Five Elements world with me and ascend? Hearing this, everyone's eyes brightened, and they revealed hopeful looks. But soon, the light in everyone's eyes dimmed again. Ji Ku smiled bitterly and said, Brother Tianqing, your idea is very good and indeed feasible. But how can we have such a powerful divine artifact that can store the entire Five Elements world? Everyone nodded. Among the divine artifacts that they currently had, the highest grade was a heavenly divine artifact forged from source stones. It was impossible for a divine artifact of this grade to store the Five Elements world. Ji Tianqing revealed a confident smile and said, Cuckoo, have you forgotten? Back then, I plucked 18 stars and refined them into the heavenly star chain. As long as you have the strength of a divine king or a king-grade divine artifact, you can store a star. Coincidentally, I happen to have a king-grade divine artifact here. As he spoke, he took out the heaven-mending pearl in his mind. Swoosh! The thumb-sized heaven-mending pearl floated in the void, emitting a dense white light. Everyone's spirits were lifted, revealing expressions of excitement and anticipation. Her palms released dazzling divine light and infused it into Ji Tianqing's body, helping him replenish his divine power and maintain his mind. Let's go too. Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and Bai Long also moved to help. Even Qian Yu and Black Dragon used their divine power and divine soul power to help Ji Tianqing. Instantly, Ji Tianqing's divine power surged, and his mind regained its clarity. Under his control, the heaven-mending orb continued to expand. Another 3 days passed. The heaven-mending orb finally expanded to a radius of 800 million miles. It could already contain 80% of the five elements world. However, the heaven-mending orb stopped expanding again. Everyone's power had reached its peak. We're not strong enough. What should we do? Just a little bit more and we would have succeeded. Take a divine pill or use a forbidden secret technique to forcefully increase our power. No. Increasing our power by a few times in a short period of time will cause serious side effects. Then what should we do? Everyone was anxious, but there was nothing they could do. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he said, "Don't worry, everyone. I have an idea." As he spoke, he quickly absorbed the power of the five elements world. Swoosh! Within the five elements world, thousands of divine and golden rays flew out and entered his body. His divine power and mind surged again, and his mind became 100 times more energetic. Forcefully absorbing a large amount of world power caused his body to swell and become several times thicker. No matter how tough his meridians and divine body were, they could not withstand such violent world power and began to tear and strain. However, Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth and continued to control the heaven-mending orb to expand. 820 million miles, 850 million miles, 890 million miles, after half a day, the heaven-mending orb finally expanded to a radius of 1 billion miles. At this time, the heaven-mending orb was as big as the five elements world. No, it was a little bigger than the five elements world. It was like a sacred, white, and flawless star, floating above the five elements world. We finally succeeded. It's not easy. We can finally leave with the five elements world. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others felt their blood boil when they saw this scene. They revealed expressions of joy and excitement. Ji Tianqing controlled the heaven-mending orb and split it into two halves from the middle. Like two super-huge bowls, they slowly covered the five elements world. As the two super-huge bowls slowly closed, the five elements world was gradually swallowed and absorbed into the heaven-mending orb. After a full 3 days, Ji Tianqing finally completed this unprecedented and earth-shattering feat. After the two super-huge bowls closed, it just happened to contain the five elements world. And inside the five elements world, there were no changes. However, this could not be considered a success. Chapter 2764. The five elements world was successfully stored in the heaven-mending pearl. Ji Tianqing's ascension plan was already halfway to success. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were no longer worried and entered the heaven-mending pearl one after another. What surprised them was that the heaven-mending pearl was only the size of a thumb from the outside. Once they entered the heaven-mending pearl, it was a vast world with a radius of 1 billion miles and the entire five elements world. They were filled with shock and amazement as they entered the five elements world and returned to the God Pagoda to rest. Before they rested, everyone gathered together. Yin Yao said to everyone, the next time we leave the God Pagoda, we should have already ascended to the God realm. At that time, everyone will be baptized by the heavenly Tao in the ascension pool. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so you have to grasp it well. Everyone nodded in agreement. The innocent and naive Ji Wushuang raised his head to look at his mother Yunyao and asked, "Mother, what is the ascension pool? Is it like taking a bath when we are baptized in the pool?" Yunyao smiled and reached out to stroke Ji Wushuang's little head. Bai Long and Ji Ku had ascended once, so they naturally knew what the ascension pool was. However, Qian Yu and Black Dragon had never experienced it before, so they looked forward to it, but they were also worried and confused. Seeing this, Yunyao looked at Ji Ku and said, "Ku, you and Bai Long have stayed in the God realm for a few hundred years, so you are very familiar with the God realm. However, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon have never been there before, so they know nothing about the God realm. Since we have nothing to do, why don't you tell them about the God realm?" Ji Ku naturally nodded in agreement and smiled. "Shuang, don't worry. The ascension pool is a pool formed by the heavenly Tao, so there is no danger. It is said that there are thousands of ascension pools in the dragon realm and thousands in the God realm. Those ascension pools appear randomly in different regions and change their positions every 100 years. Therefore, no one knows which ascension pool we will appear in. If we are lucky, the ascension pool will be on a few continents, not far from the cities and god nations. If we are unlucky and the ascension pool appears in a dangerous place, then we will be unlucky." Qian Yu and Black Dragon nodded as they listened, praying in their hearts. However, Ji Wushuang wasn't too concerned about this issue. She tugged on Ji Ku's sleeve and asked worriedly, "Second mother, what exactly is in the ascension pool?" Ji Ku gently caressed her small face and explained, "The ascension pool is filled with divine lightning liquid and 8 other types of God power. It's like a vast and misty ocean. To ordinary true gods, tempering their bodies in the ascension pool was like being reborn." Chapter 2765. In the Void. Ji Tianqing had already put the heaven-mending pearl back into his body. At this moment, the heaven-mending pearl had shrunk to the size of a mung bean and was floating in his sea of consciousness. Even the sword of burial of heaven had been put back into his body. He stood proudly in the void and stared at the galaxy in front of him. He said to himself with emotion, "After 1100 years, I'm going back to the God realm again. There's no longer anyone or anything in this mortal world that I'm reluctant to part with." Indeed, the people that he was reluctant to part with were all in the 5 elements world, and he carried them with him. Going to the God realm, it's time to resolve the grudge from 1,000 years ago. When the time comes, I'm afraid that I won't have time to conserve my energy or plan slowly. It'll be a bloody battle. But I'm not afraid. Even if I have to kill everyone in the God realm, I'll turn those 5 bastards into ashes. Even though it had been more than 1,000 years, the hatred that was engraved in his heart had not dissipated. Instead, it had become even clearer. Ji Tianqing calmed his emotions and dispelled all distracting thoughts. He began to release the laws of heaven and earth. He slowly raised his palms and released his strongest divine power, releasing the laws of the 5 elements. Swoosh! He pushed his palms forward, and a colorful divine light surged out from his palms. Suddenly, the colorful divine light condensed into a halo of light that covered 100 miles and enveloped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing channeled his energy again and released the laws of stars. Swoosh! Endless gold and silver divine light surged out from his palms and formed a halo around him. Suddenly, the halo around him became even more brilliant, like a dazzling star. Next, Ji Tianqing released the laws of space. The surging white divine light formed a halo of light that covered 100 miles around him. As he waved his palms for the 4th time, the last law of earth also surged out. Swoosh! The dark yellow divine light condensed into a halo of light that covered 100 miles around him. Up until now, Ji Tianqing had only mastered these 4 laws. Among them, the laws of 5 elements and stars were laws that true gods could master. But the laws of earth and space were laws that only heavenly gods could master. In fact, When Ji Tianqing was asleep, he saw the passage of millions of years in his dream. He gained enlightenment and vaguely touched upon the laws of life, death, and reincarnation. Of course, he didn't even comprehend a trace of Upanishad. He only vaguely understood some principles. However, that was a power and domain that only godly king experts could reach. With his current strength, he was simply too weak. After Ji Tianqing struck out with 4 different kinds of divine Tao laws, he madly circulated his God force, pushing his God force and potential to the limit. Chapter 2767. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the lightning liquid, both eyes tightly shut. He was currently breaking through to the celestial deity realm and had already maintained this posture for half a month without moving. Dazzling 5-colored divine light enveloped his entire body, flickering indeterminately. Right at this moment, the vast and surging divine power in his body boiled to the peak, successfully breaking through the shackles. Boom! It was only to hear thunder erupting from within his body, giving off a series of muffled sounds like a flash flood. Just like that, he reached the celestial deity realm without any difficulty. Of course, he was only at the first-level celestial deity realm right now. He still had not finished cultivating, continuing to sit cross-legged, circulating and assaulting the next realm. The terrifying power accumulated in his body was still continuing to boil, surging in his bloodline and divine body. After all, his strength foundation before ascending already reached 99 times the mortal realm limit. 7 days later, another muffled rumbling of thunder sounded out from Ji Tianqing's body again. He released divine light once more, his entire body shining with 5-colored brilliance. Second-level celestial deity realm already. But he did not stop yet, still assaulting the next realm. 8 days later, 3rd-level celestial deity realm. 18 days later, 4th-level celestial deity realm. A month later, 5th-level celestial deity realm. Ji Tianqing originally thought that his potential and foundation would help him charge to the 5th level, and it would calm down. But he did not expect that the vast and surging divine power in his body was still violent and fierce. Continue cultivating. Another half a month later. Rumble. The familiar muffled thunder sounded out from his body once more. He actually broke through to the 6th-level celestial deity realm. Only all the way until now did the boiling divine blood and divine power gradually calm down. Ji Tianqing was deeply gratified, circulating and regulating his breathing for 3 days, stabilizing his divine Tao foundation. All the accumulation done in the mortal realm previously was for today's eruption. Originally, I could only erupt to the 5th level. Previously, I refined 7 types of divine power before I could erupt to the 6th level celestial deity realm. It's worth it. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied. Then, he started condensing divine Tao laws. The first one was naturally divine lightning laws. In the mortal realm, he grasped the power of lightning before transcending the tribulation. Now, condensing divine lightning laws was simply as easy as flipping his hand. In just 5 days, he had successfully merged the 4 types of lightning with the heaven's path divine lightning in the lightning pool. He had used 5 different types of divine lightning to condense the most unique divine lightning law. He was definitely at the heavenly god tier, perhaps even far beyond the heavenly god tier. The second was the law of blood. It only took him 8 days to successfully condense it. The third was the law of ice. Similarly, it took him 8 days to successfully condense it. The fourth law was the heavenly wind law. It was still completed in 8 days. Next, he needed to condense heavenly god-level nomological laws, which was slightly more difficult. He had successfully condensed the longevity law in 15 days. The law of transformation was completed in 16 days. The law of soul molding was completed in 18 days. At this point, Ji Tianqing had finished cultivating for more than 150 days. Close to half a year. He had broken through to the 6th level of the heavenly God realm and grasped 11 types of divine Tao laws. But this was not the end. The most important thing had come. Condense a Godhead. Even though Ji Tianqing reached the 6th level celestial deity realm and grasped 11 laws. However, he was still not a true heavenly God. Only those who had condensed a Godhead could be considered a true heavenly God. The method of condensing a Godhead, Ji Tianqing could not be any more familiar with it. 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical forms plus a lifetime of divine power, then fusing all of the divine Tao laws, it would be a success. But this process was dangerous and tedious, consuming a lot of time. Ji Tianqing had plenty of patience. He continued to cultivate. First, use the divine soul as the foundation, then muster up his lifetime of divine power, the two fusing. 3 months later, the divine soul and divine power successfully fused without any errors. After the two fused, they formed a thumb-sized 5-colored light ball. This ball of light was the embryonic form of the Godhead. Then, Ji Tianqing fused divine Tao laws inside. From simple to difficult, from low to high. Starting from the 5 elements laws, then star law, ice law, heavenly wind law, blood law, each law that was successfully condensed would add a hint of dazzling color to that ball of light. Following that, Ji Tianqing started condensing the 6 great celestial deity level laws. Time passed silently. He was immersed in condensing laws, his mind undistracted. It had already been 10 months since everyone entered the ascension pool. Everyone ended cultivation one after another. Just as Ji Ko said previously, everyone broke through to the celestial deity realm. Even everyone's strength realm, she basically guessed it right too. Ji Wushuang was the first to end cultivation. 3rd level celestial deity realm, grasped 5 kinds of divine Tao laws, successfully condensing a Godhead. Xian Yu and Black Dragon ended cultivation soon after, a month later than Ji Wushuang. Same as Ji Wushuang, they were also 3rd level celestial deity realm. However, the 2 of them grasped 7 kinds of divine Tao laws, successfully condensing a Godhead. Chapter 2769. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw that his surroundings were empty. There was only Ji Ku. Without waiting for him to ask, Ji Ku took the initiative to explain. Big brother Tianqing, Shuang, discovered the 9th type of divine power. It's a black vortex. I'll let eldest senior sister lead them there first. I'll wait for you here. Ji Tianqing was overjoyed. He asked in disbelief, you really discovered the 9th type of divine power? Is it really a heavenly Tao opportunity? I didn't expect that the legends of the dragon and god realms were actually true. Ji Ku hurriedly nodded and said with relief, Shuang is really lucky. She actually discovered a small black vortex in the boundless lightning pool. Bai Long, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon also went to explore the lightning pool. They searched for more than a month but found nothing. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He hurriedly got up and said, then what are we waiting for? Let's go and take a look. Ji Ku hurriedly led the way for him and flew towards the southeast. The 2 of them shuttled through the lightning pool. Ji Ku could not help but ask, Big brother Tianqing, how many nomological laws did you condense during your breakthrough this time? 11, Ji Tianqing answered without hesitation. Ji Ku nodded. It's just as everyone expected. Ji Tianqing asked, everyone finished cultivating? How are the results? Ji Ku answered truthfully, they're all done. Shuang has reached the 3rd level of the celestial god realm and has condensed 5 nomological laws. Qian Yu and Black Dragon are also at the 3rd level of the celestial god realm and have condensed 7 nomological laws. Ji Ke gave a brief introduction of everyone's situation. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction. It's better than I expected. Looks like everyone has gained a lot in the lightning pool. Especially Yao Yao, she actually condensed 12 nomological laws. The two of them hurried on. 10 days later, they flew more than 4 million kilometers. Ji Tianqing's divine sense detected the auras of Yun Yao and the others from tens of thousands of miles away. They are there. Let's go. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke landed beside everyone. Yun Yao, Ji Wushuang, and the others were surrounding a black light vortex, carefully observing it. Seeing Ji Tianqing's arrival, Yun Yao and the others greeted him one after another. Ji Wushuang stepped out from the crowd and pulled Ji Tianqing's hand. He pointed at the black vortex and said, "Father, that's the mysterious vortex I discovered. This is the 9th type of divine power, and it should be the heavenly Tao opportunity that you mentioned. Unfortunately, we've all tried, but no one can refine it." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He pinched Ji Wushuang's cute little face and said, "Darling, Wushuang's luck is truly heaven-defying. I'm so envious that you actually encountered a heavenly Tao opportunity that's 1 in 10,000. After saying that, Ji Tianqing looked at Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, have you figured out the situation? What is this black light vortex?" Yun Yao nodded and said helplessly, "This is a very special type of divine power. It's a little similar to a black hole, but it's not. All of us have tried, but we can't refine it at all. Moreover, no matter what type of divine power it is, it will be devoured as soon as it gets close." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and walked in front of the black light vortex. He used his divine eye mystic technique to observe it. After 2 months, the black light vortex had devoured everyone's divine power, but there were no obvious changes. It was still 100 feet wide, and it was slowly flowing in the lightning pool. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment and saw some clues. This black divine power was indeed very similar to a black hole. It could devour all kinds of power. However, it was a heavenly Tao power after all. It would not devour the lightning liquid and the 8 types of divine power in the lightning pool. Ji Tianqing used 11 laws and released divine power of different attributes. He continuously shot out 11 sword lights. In the end, all the sword lights were devoured by the vortex. Interesting. This is probably the legendary devouring divine power, Ji Tianqing said with a smile. Everyone frowned, revealing puzzled and curious expressions. Devouring divine power. It can devour divine power of different attributes. What grade is this divine power? It's very powerful, right? Why is it legendary? Have you not seen it before? Ji Tianqing nodded and explained to everyone, "Back in the divine realm, I heard of an ancient legend. About 20,000 years ago, a peerless genius appeared in the boundless heaven continent. This person was originally a lowly warrior of the Zhouluo clan, but because of a fortuitous encounter, his life completely changed. He became a god at 30 years old, a heaven god at 100 years old, a god lord at 300 years old, and a god king at 800 years old. Such a heaven-defying advancement speed broke the tens of thousands of years of the divine realm's history. He could be called the #1 genius in the divine realm. Originally, the Zhouluo clan was a vassal of the Great Yen divine race. They existed like slaves and lived a miserable life of being enslaved. It was precisely because of the appearance of this heaven-defying genius that the Zhouluo clan became unprecedentedly powerful. He commanded tens of millions of Zhouluo clan warriors and overthrew the Great Yen divine race's rule. He seized more than a dozen divine nations of the Great Yen divine race and established himself as the Zhouluo Empire. Even many of the Great Yen divine race's experts, monarchs, and leaders were killed by him one by one. Chapter 2770. Ji Tianqing's story was short. The content was also rather rough, or even crude. However, They were all smart people. After thinking for a bit, they understood the reason behind it and started to discuss it. Cultivating martial and divine Daos is like building a tall building. One has to lay a good foundation, layer by layer, until the building is completed. Only then can the building be stable for hundreds or thousands of years without collapsing. Divine King Jiao Luo used the devouring technique to seize the power of other gods. His growth was rapid, but his divine Tao foundation was like a building that was built haphazardly. Not only was the foundation unstable, but the layers were also filled with impurities. There were even many flaws and loopholes. It's fine if the building isn't tall, but when it reaches a certain height, it will collapse. Yes, this analogy is very vivid. That's why cultivating martial and divine Daos requires one to take one step at a time. One can't be greedy for shortcuts. No matter how powerful a god king is, no matter how heaven-defying a genius is, it's just a flash in the pan. It's like a shooting star in the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. What's the point? It's a pity that God King Jiao Luo died. If he was wise enough, he would have conserved his energy when he reached the peak and eliminated his danger first. Forgetting to fight will lead to danger, and fighting will lead to death. When Ji Wuxuang heard the adults discussing, she couldn't help but pout, feeling somewhat indignant. She looked up at Ji Tianqing and revealed a reluctant expression. "Father, are you saying that this devouring divine power will harm people? It's a fatal poison, and we can't refine it." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He explained, "Wuxuang, this is a fortuitous encounter of the heavenly Tao. It's a divine power that billions of gods yearn for even in their dreams. It wasn't easy for us to encounter it. How can we give it up?" Ji Wuxuang nodded, and then asked, "But you just said that God King Jiao Luo was killed by this kind of divine power." Ji Tianqing explained patiently, God King Jiao Luo's foresight, knowledge, and ability weren't enough. He didn't have the ability to control the devouring divine power. He was born lowly and had been oppressed and enslaved by the great Yen God clan for generations. He had long hated them to the core. Therefore, after he obtained the fortuitous encounter, he madly increased his strength, madly slaughtering and taking revenge. By the time he was strong enough and discovered the problem with his body, it was already too late. There was no way to cure it, which led to his death. But we're different. We won't be as impatient as him, raising our strength without regard for the consequences. Only then did Ji Wuxuang dispel the misgivings in his heart. His little face revealed a slight smile as he said with a nod, "I knew that father would definitely be able to solve this problem." Yin Yao smiled bitterly and reminded her, "Shuang, we can't refine the devouring godly power. Don't be happy too early." Hearing her words, everyone woke up from their joy and looked at Ji Tianqing in unison. Yin Yao's eyes were also full of expectation. She said earnestly, "Tianqing, only you and Ku haven't tried it yet." Ji Tianqing nodded and said to Ji Ku, "Try and see if you can refine it." Ji Ku did not hesitate. He stepped in front of the black light vortex and raised his palms to release the five-colored divine flame, which he injected into the black light vortex. Swoosh! In an instant, the incomparably violent five-colored divine flame expelled the surrounding lightning liquid. With her as the center, the area within a radius of 1,000 feet became empty. However, when the five-colored divine flame entered the black light vortex, it was immediately swallowed. There was not even a spark. She had already expected this result, so she was not discouraged. She released her divine sense to refine the black light vortex. After 10 breaths, the result was out. It was still useless. As soon as her divine sense entered the black light vortex, it was completely swallowed. Next, she tried her best and tried several methods. The result was failure. "I can't refine the devouring godly power either." Ji Ku shook his head helplessly and retreated into the crowd. Everyone's gaze fell on Ji Tianqing. His expression became serious. Under everyone's gaze, he walked to the black light vortex. Everyone had already tried the 5 elements, star, ice, wind, and other godly powers. He did not waste time trying. He directly released the earth, transformation, and godly thunder laws. Swoosh! 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 3 godly powers of different colors flew into the black light vortex. In the blink of an eye, the 3 godly powers were swallowed. Not a single drop was left. Ji Tianqing failed. He released an invisible divine sense and slowly approached the black light vortex. After 10 breaths, his divine sense was also swallowed by the black light. He failed again. Next, he forced out a drop of divine blood and injected it into the black light vortex. He wanted to use the divine blood to refine the devouring godly power using a secret technique. However, after 15 minutes, the divine blood was swallowed, and the secret technique also failed. Ji Tianqing frowned. His expression became even more serious. Everyone was also worried. They secretly transmitted their voices to discuss. The heavenly path opportunity is right in front of us, but we can't refine it. How worrying. Brother Tianqing even used the divine blood, but he still can't do anything. What should we do? We can't just look at the heavenly path opportunity and give up helplessly, right? Even Master can't refine it. What kind of fortuitous encounter did Divine King Jiu Luo have back then? Instead, I'll be harmed by it. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with gratification. He pinched her cute little nose and said, Shuang is still the most sensible. You are indeed father's intimate little jacket. With that said, he said to everyone, Divine King Jiu Luo was harmed because of himself. I will not repeat the same mistake. The devouring godly power had a heaven-defying effect, but it was a double-edged sword that had to be used carefully. I will use it with the help of the heaven-mending orb. It will speed up my growth and not burden me. Everyone finally understood that he had only temporarily stopped using the devouring godly power. If he wanted to use it freely or even control it himself, he would need some time. This matter was over. Ji Tianqing brought everyone and flew upwards to leave the lightning pool. Alright, everyone has finished transforming. Now, it's time to see the outside world. Everyone followed Ji Tianqing. They passed through the endless lightning liquid and flew towards the top of the lightning pool. The lightning pool was very deep. Everyone flew for half an hour and passed through the lightning liquid that was thousands of miles deep before they reached the top of the lightning pool. Swoosh! As everyone left the water surface, countless splashes appeared on the calm lightning pool. The purple lightning liquid exploded into thousands of lightning arcs in the sky, giving off crackling sounds. After a while, everyone flew to 1,000 miles above the lightning pool. Above them was the azure sky. Below them was the surface of the lightning pool, which was thousands of miles in radius. There were majestic mountains in all directions. And on the eastern side of the lightning pool, on the nearest mountain, there were rows upon rows of palaces and houses. Seeing this scene, everyone started to discuss with each other. Strange, when we were in the lightning pool, it felt like it was boundless and terrifying. Why is it only 1,000 miles in radius after leaving the lightning pool? Maybe the bottom of the lightning pool is very wide and the exit is very small, like a gourd. I don't think so. The lightning pool is formed by the will of the heavenly Tao. How magical is that? It must be that the lightning pool is only 1,000 miles on the outside, but the space inside is very vast. Just like old Ji's heaven-mending pearl. It looks only the size of a thumb, but it can actually store the 5 elemental worlds. At this moment, Ji Ku suddenly reminded everyone, be careful and hide yourselves. Do not expose yourself. Ji Wu Shuang, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon were all stunned. They did not understand what he meant. Ji Tianqing explained, "We are quite lucky. The location of this lightning pool is not too remote. A few hundred miles to the east of the lightning pool, there are immortals living on the mountain peak. Without divinity crystals, it was difficult to move an inch." Swish. Ji Tianqing had just put away the 5 spatial rings and didn't have time to swallow the divinity fragments. On the mountain peak 500 miles away, dozens of divine lights had already lit up, and they were rushing over as fast as lightning. Obviously, the Thunder Pool guards in the camp were alarmed and were rushing over to support. Ji Tianqing turned around without hesitation and fled in the opposite direction. Burrow. He used the law of earth, and his figure flashed and burrowed into the ground, escaping as fast as lightning. After a short 10 breaths, he had escaped more than 5,000 miles and passed through more than a dozen mountain ranges. But the group of Thunder Pool guards in red armor locked onto his aura and relentlessly chased after him. The distance between the two sides was constantly closing, and they were only 300 miles apart. At the latest, dozens of Thunder Pool guards would catch up with Ji Tianqing in 100 breaths. At that time, he would definitely be besieged and in danger. Although he had all kinds of trump cards and ultimate skills, his combat strength was valiant. There were also Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others who could help at any time. But this was the territory of the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom, and the Great Yen Divine Race could be seen everywhere. Once Ji Tianqing was surrounded, he would have to face an endless stream of enemies. Even if he had great divine powers, he would definitely die. The situation was getting more and more critical. Ji Tianqing could only unleash his full strength and use the power of the law of space to teleport thousands of miles away in an instant. Swish! A white light flashed. He crossed a few mountain ranges and appeared in the jungle thousands of miles away. The more than 30 Thunder Pool guards were temporarily shaken off. But they persevered and chased even more desperately. Moreover, they also sent out an emergency message to inform the nearby towns and cities to mobilize a large number of experts to surround and intercept him. Ji Tianqing had guessed this result. In desperation, he could only consume his divine power and teleport continuously in the sky. Swish! 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 Every time the white light flashed, he could teleport 500 miles away. When he was in the mortal world, he could teleport 1,000 miles away every time. Moreover, he could teleport 100 times in a row. But this was the divine realm, which was completely different from the mortal world. An ordinary 6th-level celestial god could only teleport 200 miles at a time. Teleporting 500 miles like him was already an extremely rare genius. Half an hour later, he had devoured all 4 Godhead fragments. Half of the divine power that had been purified by the heaven-mending orb was refined by him, while the other half was devoured by the heaven-mending orb. He could clearly feel that his strength had increased by 20%. The power of the heaven-mending pearl had also increased slightly. Even though he was still very far from the 7th level of the celestial god realm, this was a perfect start. He believed that before long, he could advance to the 7th level celestial deity realm. When Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation, night had already fallen. He sat on the millstone and looked up at the starry sky. He murmured, "Next, I have to find a way to enter the city. I can't stay in the wilderness forever. I have to familiarize myself with this unfamiliar god realm as soon as possible and search for more clues." As soon as he finished speaking, a cold laugh filled with killing intent came from the night sky 100 miles behind him. "An ant that's going to die for sure, still thinking so much." This was the voice of a middle-aged man. Cold, sharp, like ice shards, making people feel a bone-piercing chill. Ji Tianqing suddenly got up, his right hand gripping the sword of burial of heaven, his eyes looking coldly at the night sky. only to see a streak of crimson-red light suddenly appear in the gloomy sky. Swoosh! 3 dark red divine swords that were more than 10 feet long pierced down from the sky, aiming straight for Ji Tianqing's vital points. Those 3 divine swords were all surrounded by crimson flames, illuminating the night sky within a radius of 100 miles. Before the divine swords arrived, an unparalleled violent sword intent attacked, locking onto Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing executed the Big Dipper step, his figure flickering 3 times in a row, dodging the attacks of the 3 divine swords. Of course, those 3 divine swords all brushed past him. The scorching and violent divine flames were practically about to ignite his white robe and long hair. Bam! 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 Following 3 muffled explosions. The 3 divine swords stabbed into the grassland on the mountain peak loudly, arranged in a triangular formation. And Ji Tianqing was right in the middle of the 3 divine swords. Swoosh! A white light flashed. A middle-aged man more than 10 feet tall descended from the night sky, landing 1,000 feet in front of Ji Tianqing. This person was dark red all over, his facial features sunken, and his eyes sinister. He wore black armor, with a dark red wide cloak draped over his shoulders, and a pair of pitch-black, ferocious combat boots on his feet. As soon as he landed, his entire body burst forth with an invisible divine power, enveloping a radius of 100 miles. All of a sudden, this area was sealed by him. There was no wind blowing or grass moving, even the air froze. Chapter 2777. What was a place to settle down? It was just huddling together for warmth. Zhu Qingqing's words were more tactful, but Ji Tianqing was well aware of it. However, he was not interested in the Origin Returning Association, so he did not ask any more. He thought to himself, I vaguely remember that the Great Yan Empire is located in the north of the boundless heaven continent. There are 18 divine nations under its rule. I didn't expect that we would actually ascend to the boundless heaven continent. To reach the Qian Kun continent, not only do we have to cross 2 continents, but we also have to cross an ocean. Unfortunately, only godly kings are qualified to leave the boundless heaven continent. Ji Tianqing's territory back then was on the Qian Kun continent. He really wanted to go back and see what the divine nation that was loyal to him back then was like now. Were the former disciples, guards, and fans still alive now? However, he was currently on the boundless heaven continent. He had to reach the godly king realm before he could cross the continent and the ocean. He had to stay on the boundless heaven continent for the next few hundred years. At this moment, Zhu Qingqing saw that he was silent and was secretly delighted. He asked a few questions about the Origin Returning Association just now. Now that he's silent, he must be considering whether to join us or not. I definitely can't miss such a special and mysterious genius. I must pull him into the Origin Returning Association. At this thought, Zhu Qingqing said, Brother Tianqing, you've just ascended to the godly realm, so you must be very unfamiliar with this place. Moreover, you killed Lin Wuji and 5 Thunder Pool guards. You're currently wanted by the Bloodfire Divine Nation. No matter where you go, you'll be besieged by the Great Yan Divine Race. I know you're powerful and resourceful. You're definitely not afraid of the Great Yan Divine Race's revenge. But you're all alone after all, and your forces are weak. Your situation is too dangerous. Why don't you come with me to the Origin Returning Association and stay for a while? Not only can you hide temporarily, but you can also familiarize yourself with the situation here as soon as possible. Zhu Qingqing's attitude was very friendly and not arrogant at all. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was silent, he struck while the iron was hot and said, I know that you don't know enough about the Origin Returning Association and are still wary. But that's all right. The Origin Returning Association has never forced people to do things against their will, and we won't force anyone to join us. You can decide whether to stay or leave after you understand the origin returning association. Ji Tianqing declined to comment and asked, where is the Gue Yuan Association's main camp? Is it safe? Zhu Qingqing thought that he was going to agree and was even more surprised. This was especially true for his eyes, which easily revealed his extraordinary temperament. Therefore, he turned his eyes golden as well. His appearance looked like that of an ordinary Protoss, so he did not attract much attention. Qingshan City was huge. The city had a radius of 1,000 miles and was situated on a grassland surrounded by mountains. The weather was pleasant. The 300-meter-tall brown city wall was built with 30-meter-long boulders. It had experienced thousands of years of vicissitudes, leaving behind mottled traces. As they got closer, they could feel the majestic pressure of the ancient city. Ji Tianqing leisurely walked towards the eastern city gate, secretly observing this majestic city. The 99-meter-tall wide city gate was still tightly shut at this moment. On the city wall, hundreds of guards wearing fiery red armor and carrying swords and spears could be clearly seen. Those were the city guards of Green Mountain City. They all had the strength of a heavenly god. The strength of an ordinary guard was between the second and third level of the heavenly god realm. Fourth and fifth level of the heavenly god realm could be the captain of the guards. And the city guards Qianhu and commanders were all above the sixth level of the heavenly god realm. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing thought to himself, currently, it seems that only the strength of the citizens of the heavenly god realm has not changed much. It was like this 1,000 years ago. Most people were void gods, the weakest at the bottom of the heavenly god realm. Then there were the large number of true gods who could only be ordinary citizens. Only heavenly gods dared to call themselves experts. They could be the guards and commanders of cities and towns. They were the backbone of countless kingdoms and forces. As for divine lord realm experts, they were usually the lords of a city or the leaders of a sect or gang. Experts above the seventh level of the divine lord realm were even rarer. They could usually rule over a kingdom. Ji Tianqing thought silently as he walked to the city gates. Outside the city gates, more than 100 people had already gathered, waiting in line to enter the city. Most of these people were the gods of Green Mountain City and the citizens of the surrounding cities. There were also a few great Yen divines who seemed to be adventurers or mercenaries. All of them were severely injured and extremely weak. Even so, they did not dare to rush or make a ruckus. They quietly waited for the city gates to open. Apart from that, there was a group of merchants who came from afar. They brought more than 20 heavenly god guards with them. They surrounded 3 bronze carriages. These carriages were pulled by 4 white-winged Pegasi. They were particularly eye-catching in the crowd. After the white-winged Pegasi landed, they waited docilely and did not make any noise. Ji Tianqing was curious. He used his divine sense to probe the bronze carriages. He immediately saw that there were more than 100 crystal balls in the bronze carriages. Each crystal ball was as big as a wash basin. There were many divine beasts sealed inside. There were divine foxes, divine leopards, divine wolves, divine pigs, divine snakes. There were all sorts of divine beasts. Ji Tianqing immediately understood that this group of merchants was in the pet business. Many gods and nobles would buy a large number of pets as mounts or battle beasts. He was about to withdraw his divine sense when a powerful wave of divine sense flashed across the first bronze carriage. Bang! Ji Tianqing's divine sense was hit. He blacked out and his body was paralyzed for a moment. The next moment, he was back to normal. Clearly, the other party did not intend to kill him. They were just warning him with their actions. "Sir, don't you think it's rude to peep at others so blatantly?" A clear female voice was heard in Ji Tianqing's mind. Ji Tianqing looked up out of reflex. He saw a graceful female god wearing silver armor sitting on the first bronze carriage. She was a young female three-eyed god. She was half a step away from becoming a divine lord. She was 2 meters tall and had a golden sword hanging from her waist. She was full of vigor. A pair of icy blue eyes could be seen under the helmet. There was also an eye on her forehead that was as clear as a sapphire. When Ji Tianqing looked at her, she also turned her head and glanced at Ji Tianqing indifferently. Ji Tianqing cupped his fists at her without saying anything. It was considered an apology. The silver-armored woman did not pursue the matter. She turned her head and waited for the city gate to open. 15 minutes later, the bell on the city wall rang. Clang! Clang! It's time. Open the city gate. Then, the wide and heavy city gate slowly opened to both sides. Hundreds of red-armored guards stepped out and guarded the city gate with swords and halberds. The civilians at the front of the line quickly took out their household registration badges and handed them to the city guards for inspection. They were waiting to be let in. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.